The scent hit me before the voice did. Cedar and clean linen, the exact cologne Daniel Ferris used to wear when we were 19 and stupid about the future, and I nearly dropped the box of tongue depressors I was carrying into exam room 4. They said the new clinic manager needed these restocked, he said, and then he looked up from his clipboard, and the years fell out from under both of us at once. Neither of us said anything for a second. That was the worst part, honestly. Not the shock, but the silence after it, the way we both just stood there doing math in our heads. 11 years. 11 years since he'd driven away from our apartment in Bloomington with his half of the furniture in a rented trailer, telling me he needed to figure out who he was without me deciding it for him. I'd cried for exactly 1 week and then buried myself in nursing prerequisites like they were a personality transplant. I never found out what he chose to become. Apparently the answer was family medicine physician, and apparently the universe had a sick sense of humor because he'd just been hired to run the Riverside Health Clinic where I'd worked triage for the past 4 years. Rena, he said finally, like he was testing whether the name still fit me. Dr. Ferris, I said back, sharper than I meant to, and watched something flicker across his face. Amusement, maybe, or hurt, or both, because we used to call each other ridiculous nicknames and now I was handing him a title like a fence. I want to say I handled the rest of that morning with grace. I did not. I triaged 11 patients, misfiled 2 charts, and told Mrs. Okonkwo her blood pressure cuff reading twice because I'd stopped listening to my own voice the first time. Every hallway in that clinic had become a minefield. He was in the break room refilling his coffee. He was at the front desk asking Priya where the good stethoscopes were kept. He existed now, in my space, in Scrubs-adjacent business casual, looking older in a way that was deeply unfair to the rest of us, the kind of older that just means more settled into his own face. At lunch, he found me on the loading dock, which was where I went to eat a sad turkey sandwich and pretend the world wasn't happening for 22 minutes a day. "Can I sit?" he asked. "It's a free dock." He sat. For a while, neither of us talked, and I let myself notice the small things. A thin white scar above his eyebrow that hadn't been there before, the way his hands were rougher now, a physician's hands instead of a 19-year-old guitar player's hands. I wondered what put the scar there. I wondered if I was allowed to ask. "I didn't know you went into nursing," he said eventually. Back then, you wanted to teach art history." "People change their minds when their life plans get repossessed," I said. And I heard how bitter it sounded, even as it left my mouth, and I hated myself a little for still carrying that particular splinter after 11 years. "That's fair," he said quietly. "I earned that." Here's the thing, nobody tells you about running into the person who broke your heart before either of you knew what a heart was really for. You expect it to feel like closure, some tidy final chapter, and instead, it feels like reopening a book you thought you'd finished, only to discover someone else had been writing in the margins the whole time you were away. I found myself, against every ounce of my own good judgment, wanting to know what he'd written, where he'd gone. Why medicine, of all things, when he used to say hospitals gave him the creeps? I didn't ask that day. I went back inside and took someone's blood pressure and let the clinic swallow me whole the way it always did, gratefully, mercifully. But he had a way of showing up. Not aggressively. He was too careful for that, too aware of how it would look, a new manager courting an employee, and to his credit, he kept a scrupulous distance in front of anyone else. But at 7:45, before the waiting room filled, he'd be in the small kitchen making coffee exactly the way I liked mine, black with a spoon of sugar, and he'd slide it across the counter without a word, like it was nothing, like it wasn't a small act of memory that undid me every single time. "You remembered," I said, the 4th morning it happened. "I remember a lot of things," he said. "I just didn't have the right to say them out loud until you told me it was okay." 3 weeks in, we had our first real fight, and it wasn't about the past at all. It was about a patient, a teenage boy who came in scared and evasive about a home situation neither of us liked the shape of, and Daniel wanted to move slower than I did on getting social services involved, and I told him, in the hallway, voice low but furious, that he didn't know this kid, this town, the way I did, that he'd only just arrived and didn't get to set the pace on something this important. "You think I don't care because I want to do it right instead of fast?" He shot back, and for one terrible second I saw the boy he used to be, defensive and wounded, the same boy who'd once told me I didn't get to decide things for him either. We didn't speak for 2 days. Then the social worker came back and confirmed the boy needed exactly the kind of careful, patient handling Daniel had pushed for, and I had to walk into his office and eat every word. "I was wrong," I said. "I'm sorry." You were protecting a kid, he said. That's not something to apologize for, ever. And that was, weirdly, the moment something shifted. Not romance exactly, not yet, but respect. The recognition that the boy I'd loved at 19 had grown into someone who could hold a hard decision without flinching, and that maybe I owed it to both of us to find out who else he'd become. I think about that fight sometimes, how easy it would have been to let it end things before they started again. How many of us have walked away from someone good over a disagreement that was really just two scared people trying to protect what mattered. I wonder if you've had that moment too, the one where you almost let pride finish what heartbreak started. It was October when he finally told me why he'd left Bloomington the way he had. We were closing up the clinic, just the two of us, chairs stacked, lights dimmed to that after-hours amber that makes everyone look softer than they are. My father was sick, he said. Really sick. I didn't know how to say it out loud back then, not even to you, especially not to you, because saying it made it real. I just knew I needed to learn how to actually help people instead of standing next to them feeling useless. I thought leaving was the only way to become someone who could fix things. I didn't understand yet that I was breaking something to do it. I hadn't known. He'd never told me, not once, not in all our fights about it after, and something in my chest cracked open in a way that had nothing to do with anger. You could have told me, I said. I would have. I know, he said. That's what scared me most. You would have stayed. You'd have put your whole life on pause for me, and I didn't think I deserved that yet. I'm not sure I deserve it now, either. But I'm done running from it. I stood there in the amber light, holding 11 years like a chart. I finally understood how to read, and I made the choice I'd been circling for weeks without admitting it. I closed the distance instead of the door. I'm not 19 anymore, I told him. I don't put my life on pause for anybody. But I'm choosing this, with my eyes open. That's different. He smiled the way he used to, the one that made the whole waiting room feel unnecessary. Different's good, he said. Different, I can work with. We didn't fall into each other's arms that night like some movie. We're both too old and too careful for that now, and there's a policy about supervisor relationships we had to sort out properly first, which took its own quiet, unglamorous weeks of paperwork and a conversation with HR that felt more nerve-wracking than the reunion itself. But 6 months later, on a Tuesday with nothing special about it, he brought me coffee the way he always did, black with 1 sugar, and set beside it a small paper cup with 2 tongue depressors taped into a crooked X, and written across them in his terrible physician's handwriting were 4 words, still choosing you, always. I keep those tongue depressors in my locker at the clinic, right next to my badge, and some mornings when the waiting room is loud and the coffee's gone cold before I get to it, I think about how strange it is that the same medicine that once seemed to steal him away from me was the very thing that finally taught him how to stay. I don't know if everyone gets a second chance like that. I don't know if they should take it, even if they get it. But I know what I did with mine, and I haven't spent a single day since regretting it.